I saw everything before it happened, but I couldn't stop it. There are things that mark you from the inside in a way that even time can't erase. And when I say this, it's not a figure of speech. It's real. Because what happened to my brother, I dreamed it before more than once, and nobody believed me, not even him. My story begins long before the accident, in those quiet moments when the universe whispers warnings we're too afraid to hear. Since I was little, I dreamed of a gate, a heavy iron gate, completely rusted. It was the gate of the house where I grew up. It wasn't just a detail in the dream, it was always there, always the same sound, that sharp squeak scratching at your ear that only those who've had an old gate at home know. It was as if it cried every time it opened, a metallic weeping that seemed to carry the weight of everything unspoken, and behind the gate there was always a shadow. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't a person, it was just darkness, a darkness that seemed to have eyes. I saw that shadow standing there, watching us play in the yard, me, my brother Kaio, and the older one, Rafa. But the shadow never looked at me. It looked at Kaio, always Kaio. These dreams started when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I would wake up crying, scared, telling my mother that the man at the gate was going to take someone. She would just pull me into her lap, stroke my head, and say it was just a dream. But I remember her expression. She didn't speak with fear, but she didn't laugh either. I think deep down she felt something too. Only back then, with what we lived through at home, dreams were the least of our problems. My father was the kind of man we avoided even when he was sober. He hit my mother, yelled at us over any little thing, and seemed to carry an anger that had no end. The house lived in a heavy atmosphere, and I thought the gate in my dream was a reflection of that. That feeling of danger outside, and sometimes even more inside. But then we grew up. My mother finally had the courage to leave with us, and we went to live in a smaller place, but much calmer. My father disappeared from the map, thank God, and for a long time, the nightmares disappeared too, until Kaio turned 15. It was around that time they came back. Out of nowhere, I started dreaming about the gate again. Only this time the dream was different. It was no longer the shadow just watching. Now it was Kaio crossing the gate at night, running as if he were fleeing from someone. And in the middle of the street, that shadow grabbed him by the arm and pulled with force. I screamed, I banged on the gate, but the rusty iron latch turned by itself and left me locked inside. I saw my brother being taken away and couldn't do anything. I woke up sweating, heart racing. I looked at my phone. 2:44 in the morning. I found it strange but tried not to think too much about it. But the same nightmare came back 2 days later, and again at the same time. 2:44. The third time was even worse. I saw Kaio's face, saw the fear in his eyes, saw the shadow grabbing him harder, and when I woke up, I knew. That wasn't just a dream, it was a warning. Have you ever felt that the universe was trying to tell you something, but you were too afraid to listen? What if those whispers in the night, those unexplained chills, those moments when your heart knows something your mind refuses to accept? What if they're all real? What if ignoring them means losing what matters most? I went to his room the next day and told him everything without beating around the bush. I told him about the gate, the shadow, the time, everything, and he laughed. He laughed nervously, trying to hide it. He said I was watching too many horror movies, that it must be exhaustion, that dreams are just things from the mind. But I saw the way he looked at me. He was scared, he just didn't want to show it. Share in the comments an affirmation beginning with, "I recognize that." And let that recognition be the first step toward honoring the warnings your soul gives you. Because acknowledging what we feel, what we know in our bones to be true, even when the world tells us we're imagining things, that's where our power lives. And I was left with that stuck in my throat, unable to let it go. I couldn't sleep properly in the following days. The sound of the creaking gate stayed in my head. The noise was almost physical to me, like when you hear a spoon scraping on a porcelain plate, that discomfort that makes you shiver. And then the night came. It was a Thursday. Kaio went out to play soccer with friends. The field was on the other side of the street. He didn't even need to take a bus or anything. He just had to cross through the gate. My mother was already sleeping. I lay on the couch, watching TV on low volume. I was exhausted from the week, and without realizing it, I dozed off. And that's when the nightmare came back. But this time it wasn't like the others. I saw the gate opening slowly. I saw Kaio passing through with the ball under his arm. The street was empty, but suddenly the shadow appeared. And it was no longer a shadow. It was a car. A dark car coming down the street, with its headlights on, fast without braking, as if no one was driving it. The headlight illuminated my brother's face, and before I could scream in the dream, he was hit. It was a crash. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, with my heart pounding in my throat. And the most terrifying thing is that I woke up before the real sound, as if I already knew. I ran outside, barefoot. The front gate was wide open, opening and closing with the wind. The sound of iron scraping echoed on the sidewalk. And there in the street, a crowd, people screaming, cell phones recording, a body on the ground. It was Kaio. I remember the sound, not the accident itself, but the gate. It squeaked with the wind hitting it, opening and closing by itself. That sharp, dragging sound cut through the air as if scratching the ear, just like in my dreams. Exactly the same. And as I ran to the middle of the street, I already knew what I was going to see. Kaio was lying on his side, with his head turned toward the pole. The neighbors around were trying to call an ambulance, but nobody knew if he was still breathing. The car that hit him didn't even stop. They said it was dark, that it came down the street flying, that there was only time to hear the engine disappearing in the distance. I stopped beside the body, knelt on the hot asphalt, and felt my legs tremble. I didn't cry, not in that moment. I stayed there looking at him, thinking only one thing. I should have done something. I should have been able to prevent it. But what do you do when a nightmare becomes real? What could I have done if everything was already written before it happened? It was only when the neighbor touched my shoulder that I noticed the detail that destroyed me completely. She pointed to the digital clock at the corner store on the wall. The red light blinked the numbers clearly in the middle of the darkness. 2:44 in the morning, the same time, always the same. All 3 times I woke up from those dreams were at that exact minute. It was as if that instant had been marked from the beginning, as if no matter what I said, what I did, the end had already been decided. At the wake, my mother trembled so much she could barely hold my hand. Rafa stayed silent the whole time, just staring at the coffin, as if he were in a trance. I stayed in a corner, couldn't get close, because it wasn't just the pain of loss. It was guilt. Everyone said it was a tragedy, an accident, that the car fled, that nobody could have predicted it. But I knew they could. I predicted it. And what remained was the sound. Sometimes I'm washing dishes and I hear the noise out of nowhere. The gate, even closed, even locked, it creaks. Not always, only when the wind blows or when the clock strikes 2:44. I've tested it. I've waited up just to see if it was all in my head. And on some nights, the gate moves. It's almost as if there's still someone there, waiting on the other side, watching like in the dream. The most terrifying thing is that after what happened, I started to notice something else. It wasn't just about Kaio. Other people on the street started telling similar stories. A neighbor said her son had a dream about the same gate that same week, that he saw a figure outside and was afraid to leave. Another young man said he saw the gate opening by itself at dawn, but thought it was just the wind. And there was even an old man who's lived there forever, who said that years ago a boy died run over in the same spot, also at dawn, also on a day with strong wind. Coincidence? Maybe. But there are things that even logic can't explain. The gate is still there, rusted, with the same unbearable squeak. My mother has talked about changing it, having it torn out, putting in a new one, but something stops me. It's as if tearing it out would erase what happened, or worse, as if it would provoke it again. Have you ever considered how the things we try hardest to forget are the very things that refuse to leave us? What if the memories that haunt us, the sounds that echo in the silence, the moments that replay in our minds, what if they're not punishments, but invitations to finally understand what we couldn't see before? And every time the wind blows stronger at night, I sit on the edge of the bed, look at my phone, and wait. If it hits 2:44 and the gate creaks, I get up and pray that it's not another announced farewell. Write in the comments a declaration beginning with, "I accept that." Because accepting what we cannot change, what has already been written in the fabric of our lives, is not surrender. It's the beginning of peace. When we stop fighting the echoes of our past and instead listen to what they're trying to teach us, we find a kind of strength we never knew we had. There's a type of dream that shouldn't repeat itself. The first one was on a Monday, right after a hard day of work. I got home close to midnight, took a shower, ate something, and crashed on the couch with the TV on mute. I don't even know when I closed my eyes. I only remember the sensation of running. In the dream, I was crossing a dark street that seemed to stretch endlessly. The sidewalks were empty, the streetlights were on, but the silence was heavy. You could only hear my own gasping breath, trying to pull in air that wouldn't come. And behind me, heavy footsteps, steady, getting closer and closer. I tried to run, I swear I tried, but it felt like my body was trapped, as if I were running underwater. My legs wouldn't obey. The more I forced myself, the slower I became. It was agony. I looked back and saw it. It was a tall shadow, deformed, faceless, but the eyes were red like embers, like brake lights locked on me. I wanted to scream, call for help, but my voice wouldn't come out, just that muffled desperation. I woke up choking, sitting on the couch, my chest rising and falling as if I had actually been running. I grabbed my phone. 1:58. I recorded the time, I don't even know why. It just seemed important to remember. I sat there for a while trying to understand. I thought it was just stress, bad sleep. Too much on my mind, you know? 2 days later, same routine. I worked until late, delivered the last ride, came back home, had dinner, whatever, and went to bed. And it came again. The same dream, same street, same scenario, only this time worse. I managed to see the shadow up close. Its arms were too long, dragging on the ground, and wherever they passed, they left a trail, as if the asphalt were burning. The eyes remained red, but now it was closer. I looked around and noticed something that froze me. The street in the dream was identical to the one I pass every day to get home. The same corner with the closed bakery, the peeling wall with the old advertisement, the abandoned bus stop. I woke up drenched in sweat, with hard muscles, as if I had actually been running. I grabbed my phone, 1:58 again. From that point on, I started avoiding thinking about it. I distracted myself with anything, put on music, videos on my phone, invented new routes to get home. But the fear had already settled in. It wasn't just a nightmare, it was a warning. The third time didn't take long, and when it came to leave a mark. In the dream, I started running right away, as if I already knew what was coming. But this time the shadow wasn't behind me. It was on both sides. It was as if all the air had transformed into it. Every step I took was a struggle. The street seemed narrower, darker, as if it were draining my strength, and then I heard it. The shadow spoke. It wasn't a normal voice. It was something that vibrated from within, that entered the ear and scrambled everything inside your head. "Daniel! Daniel!" I tried to run, but I fell to the ground, hands scraping the asphalt, the sound of something dragging behind. When I lifted my face, I saw it. It was the corner with the old bus stop, the one on my street. And before I woke up, I heard the last thing. "Today I finish." I jumped up. The phone fell from my hand when I tried to grab it, but I managed to see the screen lit up on the floor. 158 again. I stood there, staring at that number until the screen went dark. I tried to understand if it was just coincidence. I tried, but my body already knew the answer. That night I couldn't lie down. I took a shower, made coffee, kept pacing around the living room. The couch still had the sweat mark from the night before. The clock moved slowly, as if it wanted to provoke me. Each minute was another push toward what was coming. When midnight struck, I decided to go out. I opened the app and started driving. Better to keep my head busy. I took people from clubs, from night shifts, even a couple coming back from a motel. I did the rides on autopilot. But with each client who got out of the car, I watched the time getting closer. 1:20, 1:35, 1:42, last ride of the night. A woman with a bakery bag going to her mother's house. I dropped her off and turned off the app. I didn't have the courage to pick up anyone else. I just wanted to get home. I took the usual route, the fastest one, the same street from the dream, the same cracked sidewalk, the same bakery with the grate pulled down. And then I saw him. A man standing in the middle of the lane, dark coat, hood, doing nothing, just standing there firm as if he already knew I was going to pass by. I slowed down by reflex. I tried to understand if it was someone waiting for a ride, if they needed help, if it was just a lost drunk. But he looked at me. It wasn't just any look, it was direct, straight, without doubt, as if I were the only thing in the world. The same silhouette from the dream, same posture, same silence. I accelerated, that's what my body told me to do. And the instant I pressed down hard, he moved his hand, pulled something from his waist. It gleamed for a second in the reflection of the headlight. I heard the first crack on the glass, then another and another, the dry sound of impact, glass cracking, the front of the car losing control. I turned the wheel with everything I had. The wheel scraped the curb. The car spun once, then stopped. I only remember the sound of the tires, my arm hitting the door, and the streetlight spinning above me. I woke up already in the hospital. White light, machines beeping, smell of alcohol, the sound of IV dripping onto metal. A police officer came, said I had been the victim of an attempted robbery, that a man tried to stop me to take the car, that I was lucky. One bullet grazed my shoulder and another hit the passenger seat. I asked what time it was. He pulled out his notepad and answered as if it were just another piece of information in the report. It was registered at 1:58 in the morning. I didn't react right away, just looked at the ceiling and felt that it was over. Since that day, I never dreamed about being chased again. Never had that kind of nightmare again. No shadow, no street, no red eyes. But I don't see this as a relief. What haunts me is knowing that the shadow succeeded. It reached me, and maybe now that it has, it doesn't need to run anymore. What would it mean to you if every warning you ignored, every premonition you dismissed as mere anxiety, was actually your soul trying to save you from what it could already see coming? And if you knew that ignoring those whispers meant walking straight into the moment they were trying to prevent, would you finally listen? I always thought mirrors had something strange about them. Even when I was a child, I avoided staring too long, especially at dawn. But I only understood the reason when I moved to that old apartment in the west zone of São Paulo. It was my first place alone, you know? Small, cheap, poorly maintained. But it was mine. And it had a huge mirror nailed to the bedroom wall. Old frame, darkened bottom at the edges, and a strange thing. It didn't reflect with exact clarity. It had an opaque shine, kind of stained, that gave the feeling that the glass was thicker than it should be. On the first night there, I already had a nightmare. In the dream, I was sitting on the bed looking at the mirror. And there, in the back, on the floor, there was a thin girl with dark hair covering half her face, body curled up, as if she were watching me in silence. I tried to turn around to see if there was someone really there, but my body wouldn't respond. It was as if only the reflection existed, as if I were trapped in it. I woke up in a cold sweat with that feeling that someone had just left the room. I looked at the mirror. It was there whole, but I swear on everything. For a very quick second, I thought I saw the movement of her hair pulling away from the glass. Too fast to be real, too slow to be just a reflection. The next day I tried to ignore it. I blamed it on the stress of moving, on tiredness, on anxiety, but deep down I was left with that stuck in my throat. On the second night, the nightmare came back, this time clearer. The girl was no longer on the floor. She was standing, leaning against the mirror from the inside, face almost pressed against the glass, skin too white, eyes too sunken, mouth half open, as if she were about to say something. Only she didn't speak. She just pressed her hand against the glass and looked at me. And deep in my head, I knew. She wanted to get out. I tried to get up, leave the room, scream, anything, but I was stuck, paralyzed. I woke up with my heart pounding in my throat, breathing uneven, hands sweating as if I had run a marathon. I looked at my phone. 2:13 in the morning. That disturbed me. I told my co-workers, trying to laugh about the situation. One of them said it was just accumulated exhaustion, that I needed to turn off the computer earlier. Another suggested I cover the mirror with a sheet, and that's what I did. That night I slept on the living room couch, but it didn't help at all. The nightmare came again. Same time, same girl, same reflection, only now she spoke. Her voice didn't match her face. It was dry, low, as if it had come from a very distant place, and she said only one thing: "I'm going to get out, and when I get out, someone is going to die." I woke up with a dry throat. I stared at the dark hallway of the apartment, waiting to hear some noise, a knock, a whisper, but nothing came. Just silence and the covered mirror. The next morning, I stared at the sheet covering the glass, as if it were a fragile barrier. Suddenly that seemed ridiculous. It was just an old mirror, but I couldn't stay in the same environment with it anymore. I decided I was going to have it torn out. I called the building manager, asked if I could take it off the wall because it seemed glued directly to the plaster. He said there was no problem, but that it might damage the structure of the drywall. Even so, I insisted. But before doing that, the worst night of all came. Share in the comments your reflection beginning with, "I have learned that." Because understanding what our fears are trying to teach us, what the shadows in our mirrors and the whispers in our dreams are revealing about the fragility of the veil between worlds, that's where we find the courage to face what we've been running from. When we acknowledge that some warnings come not to terrify us, but to prepare us, we stop being victims and become witnesses to something far greater than ourselves. That night, even with the mirror covered, I slept badly. My whole body ached, as if I had spent the entire dawn trying to run from something. And in a way, that's exactly what it was. I fell asleep around 11. I woke up again at 2:13 in the morning. Only this time it wasn't the dream that woke me. It was a dry noise, a crash inside the room. I got up, startled, heart racing, and went toward the sound. The mirror, that damn mirror, was cracked. The sheet still covered most of it, but you could see the broken lines cutting through the glass from top to bottom, forming a strange design, like veins. I stood there, hypnotized, staring at the cracks as if they were going to tell me something. But they didn't say anything. The one who spoke was the phone. It rang in the living room, loud ring in the middle of the night, that sound that cuts to the bone. When I answered, it was my mother crying, disturbed, choking between words. My uncle, her brother, had suffered a massive heart attack alone, at home, with no chance of help. The time of cardiac arrest, 2:13, registered in the medical report. The call dropped. I walked slowly to the room, approaching the cracked mirror, still covered by the sheet, and I swear on everything that is most sacred. At that moment, the air inside the room became different, denser, colder. I got close, pulled the sheet, and there she was. The girl in the reflection, motionless, eyes open, pale face, staring straight into my eyes. But this time she wasn't behind me. She was alone in the reflection, as if the mirror reflected a different place, a place where she had finally gotten out, or let me see where she had always been. After that day, I called a mason and had the mirror torn from the wall. I would pay whatever it cost. The damage to the wall didn't matter. I just wanted that thing gone. But here comes the most cursed detail of all this. Even without that mirror, even months later, sometimes when I walk into a bar bathroom or go up in an elevator with a mirror or pass by some storefront window, I see her. Not clearly, not for long. But I see her standing in the reflection, always in the corner, always watching, as if there's still something to complete. Because deep down, what scares me most isn't even what already happened. It's the phrase that never left my head, the one she whispered in the dream, "I'm going to get out." She didn't say she already got out. She said she's going to get out. And every time I pass by a silent mirror in an empty place, I'm certain that this isn't over yet, and that next time maybe it won't be a warning anymore. Maybe it will be me. The first thing I felt was fear, and it wasn't at the time of the accident, or after. It was in the dream. Actually, it was in the nightmare. It was dawn. I remember because I looked at the clock before falling asleep. 2:40, it was hot, window open, my mother sleeping in the room next door. The dream came dry without warning. My younger brother, Felipe, was standing right in the middle of the old bridge in our town, that iron one, full of rusty grating that goes over the Parapeba River. He was there in the middle, and a bus was coming from the other side with its headlights on at an absurd speed. And Felipe, he didn't move, seemed glued to the ground. I screamed for him to run, get out of there, but my voice wouldn't come out, just the wind. A dirty wind, hot, that lifted dust and made the bridge plates tremble. The bus didn't brake. The horn sounded like an animal's scream, and in the last second, when the white lights covered everything, I saw his body falling into the river. It was as if he had been thrown by the explosion of light. I woke up with a jump, pajamas stuck to my back, throat dry, and my heart felt like it was going to come out of my chest. I grabbed my phone with my hand shaking. 3:17 in the morning. I didn't go back to sleep. I stayed staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that it was just another nightmare. Only it didn't feel like just anything. It felt like a warning. The next morning I mentioned it to my mother. I just said, I had a horrible dream about Felipe. She stopped stirring her coffee, looked at me and said, I also dreamed about him last night, but in mine he was underwater, banging on the glass, asking for help. I remember the way she said it low, as if it were a sin to say. We looked at each other for a few seconds and understood without needing to say anything more. We didn't tell Felipe anything. He's the youngest, the one who never takes anything seriously. We didn't want to scare him with nonsense, but deep down, neither of us thought it was nonsense. That same night another dream came, and then there was no way to pretend anymore. This time I saw the bus from the inside, the lights flickering, the water rising to the seats, and my brother's face pressed against the window glass as if someone had pushed his head there. He was screaming, but without sound. Everything was mute, just the image of him, with his eyes wide open and desperation beating inside the bus. I woke up screaming, really screaming, and my mother came into the room startled, saying she had heard a noise. Only she wasn't talking about the real scream. She was talking about the same noise from her dream. It seemed like the dreams were mixing, that we were seeing the same thing in different places. 2 days later, he said he was going to a party with friends, that he would come back late, but that it was all good. I asked which route they were going to take. He said, the usual one, through the bridge. My mother and I said no. We almost begged. Take a detour, go another way. It takes longer, but it's better. He laughed at us, really laughed. You guys are still with these dream ideas? Come on, Mom. Come on, Carol. I wanted to tie him to the bed, but what could I do? He's already an adult. He's 23 years old. He thought it was our paranoia, that it was just the craziness of mother and sister. And he went. Have you ever felt the weight of knowing something terrible is coming, but being completely powerless to stop it? What if the people we love most are walking toward their fate, and all we can do is watch, pray, and hope that somehow, against all odds, the vision we saw was wrong? Wouldn't you give anything, everything, to rewrite what you already know is written? That night I couldn't lie down. I stayed in the living room with the TV on, not paying attention to anything. At 2:40, I dozed off on the couch, and it was the worst of the three dreams. This time I didn't see him anymore. I saw the bus coming, only it was coming straight at me. It was as if I were in his place. I woke up crying with a dry mouth, screaming like a child. I felt a pain in my chest, a fear that doesn't fit in any word. And then came the phone. Write in the comments something beginning with I transform, because when we transform our deepest fears into prayers, our visions into warnings we actually heed, our love into action that refuses to let fate go unchallenged, we become something more than passive observers of tragedy. We become warriors, fighting against what seems inevitable. And even when we lose, even when the phone rings at the exact hour we feared most, the fact that we tried, that we fought, that we loved enough to stand against the darkness, that transforms us forever. The phone rang exactly at 3:17, the same time as the first dream, the same hour I saw Felipe fall from the bridge without being able to scream, without being able to move. I answered with a cold hand, chest locked, as if I already knew what was coming. On the other side, a man's voice, too calm, too formal. He said he was from the highway police, that there had been an accident, and that my brother, that his name was among the passengers, that it was important for us to go to the hospital in the neighboring town where they were taking the injured, and the others. My mother's legs failed before the call even ended. She fell to the living room floor and started repeating the same phrase, as if there was nothing else left but that. I saw it. I saw it. I knew it. She hit her own chest, crying as if she were being pulled into a hole. I could only look at the clock. 3:17. That was embedded in my head like hot iron. We ran to the hospital. When we arrived, the courtyard was already full. Parents, friends, neighbors, all looking for their children, waiting for some news. I learned that the bus bringing the young people from the party lost its brakes right after the curve. And there, on that descent before the iron bridge, it couldn't stop. It hit the side, broke through the protection, and fell straight into the Parapeba. Half of the bodies still hadn't been found. Felipe was one of the last to be pulled from the water. I'm not going to describe what it was like to recognize him. I can't. But what I can say is that it wasn't the first time I had seen that face in that state. I had seen it before in the bus window, in my nightmares. It was the same look, the same open mouth, the same plea for help that was never said. After that, my life didn't return to normal, neither did my mother's. She stopped leaving the house, stopped cooking, stopped combing her hair, stopped turning on the TV. She started sleeping in the living room with the light on, as if she were afraid of what could appear when everything went dark. And me, I keep trying to understand why we saw everything before, why we dreamed about it 3 times, why nobody believed us, why not even we could prevent it. At the 7th-day Mass, the priest said there are things only God understands, that maybe it was a way to prepare us, to soften the pain, but that didn't soften anything. It only gave more weight, because knowing and not being able to prevent it is a kind of guilt that can't be explained. On the day of the burial, while the coffin descended, I looked at the bridge in the distance, hidden among the trees. It looked different, smaller, but alive. It's strange to say this, but I swear I had the feeling that the bridge was looking back, as if it knew what it had done, as if it had participated. And since that day, I can't cross it anymore. Not by car, not by bus, not on foot. If someone insists, I make up an excuse, go round, delay my life, but I don't go through there. And there's something else. Until today, whenever I wake up startled in the middle of the night, my first instinct is to look at the clock. And on the few times when the hand is at 3:17, I know I won't be able to sleep again, because at that hour, it seems like time stops, as if everything that happened to Felipe is still trapped there. As if he's still in the middle of the bridge, with the headlights coming, and us unable to do anything. And what if the worst part isn't even the loss itself, but the haunting question that never leaves you? Could I have done more? What if every moment of peace you try to find is interrupted by that same image, that same hour, that same knowledge that you saw the end coming and couldn't change it? How do you live with the weight of being a witness to fate itself? And the worst of all is thinking, what if that wasn't the last warning? What if it was just the first? Leave in the comments your testimony with the words, I discover that, because when we discover that some knowledge comes not as a gift, but as a burden, we must carry that some visions are not meant to empower us, but to humble us before forces far greater than ourselves. We begin to understand that being awake to the unseen world doesn't make us special. It makes us responsible. And that responsibility, that weight of knowing, of seeing, of being unable to change what's already written in the stars, transforms us into something we never asked to become, eternal witnesses to tragedies we can predict but never prevent. The worst wasn't losing my grandmother. The worst was having dreamed about the exact way she was going to die days before it happened and not being able to do anything to prevent it. My grandmother Lourdes had been hospitalized for a few days because of pneumonia. She was already old, 78 years, but she was lucid, eating properly, and the doctor said it was just a matter of time before she was discharged, stable. That was the word they used, but on one of those dawns, I woke up drenched in sweat, the kind of panic that makes you sit up in bed with your chest locked, not knowing if it was a dream or reality. I dreamed I was in the hospital, in the hallway where her room is. Everything was kind of dark, kind of blurry, but it was the hospital. The door to her room was closed. When I tried to enter, I realized it was locked from the inside, but I could hear everything. I heard my grandmother screaming. It wasn't a scream of fear, it was real desperation from someone struggling to breathe. She was banging, scratching the door, asking for help, and I was pounding that wood with all the strength in my body. I screamed for help, tried to break the doorknob, but it was as if my body wouldn't obey. My arms seemed weak, my voice wouldn't come out. Then, through the crack under the door, a dark smoke started coming out, a dense smoke, kind of oily, as if something were burning inside the room. But there was no smell. It just came crawling across the floor. And suddenly silence. No noise. Not from her, not from the smoke, not from the hospital. Everything stopped. That's when I woke up. I was crying, really crying, without even understanding why. I grabbed my phone and looked at the time, 4:06 in the morning. I'll never forget that time. At first I thought it might just be a reflection of worry. I don't know, tired mind, anxiety, fear of losing someone dear, those things. I tried to convince myself of that all day. I stayed quiet, didn't even mention it to my mother. But the next night it happened again. This time, the dream started differently. I was already inside the room, standing in the corner looking at the bed. My grandmother was lying down with her eyes open, fixed on the ceiling, but she wasn't moving. And even without any noise, I knew she wasn't well. The walls around her were moving, not as if they were going to collapse. It was the shadows. They stretched, dragged themselves, as if they were breathing inside the room, consuming all the air. I was frozen. I couldn't speak or approach until one of those shadows passed close to the wall and touched her hand. It was as if it sucked the last energy that remained. Her hand became pale, almost grey, and I woke up gasping with a dry throat. I looked at the time. 4:06 again. I got up from bed right away and went to the kitchen. I sat at the table and cried again, but this time it wasn't sadness, it was fear. The next day I told my mother. She went white, but said it was just the mind trying to process everything. We cling to these easy explanations because they relieve us. But deep down I already knew. I knew that wasn't just something in my head, it was a warning. 2 days later the hospital called. They said my grandmother was better, that she had eaten, talked with the nurses, even laughed at a joke. That relieved me on the outside, but not on the inside, because the following night came the third dream, and it was the worst of all. In the dream I was again in the hallway, the same weak light, the same strange silence, but this time the door was already ajar. I approached, pushed slowly, and the room was empty. The bed where my grandmother always stayed was there with the sheets pulled, as if someone had just left. The oxygen still on, the monitors blinking in standby mode, only there was nobody there. That's when I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow dragging itself from the corner of the room to the door, as if it were dripping down the walls. It had no form, but it seemed alive. It was as if it had finished what it came to do there, and when it passed by me, I felt a dry cold from the inside out, a shiver that wouldn't pass even under the covers. The shadow went down the hallway, became weaker, and disappeared before the curve. That's when I tried to go back to the room, but I couldn't enter. The door slammed by itself and locked again, and behind it, only the sound of air being sucked as if someone was still struggling to breathe in the void. I woke up with my heart racing, eyes burning, chest hurting, as if I had run a marathon. I looked at the clock. 4:06 again, for the third time. I got up slowly, went to the living room. My mother was already sitting on the couch with the phone in her hand. She looked at me with a pale face and started crying before even saying anything. They tried to resuscitate, but it was respiratory arrest. She said this in a low voice, almost breathless, as if repeating what she had just heard. I just sat on the floor. I didn't cry, didn't speak, didn't ask anything because I already knew. I had already seen the locked room, the screams, the shadow, the empty bed. It was all there in the dreams, as if I had been forced to live the same loss 3 times before it really happened. Do you remember the last time you woke up at an hour that felt cursed, that felt like a doorway to something you couldn't escape? What if those moments aren't random, but appointments we've made with fate without knowing it? Markers in time where the veil between what is and what will be grows so thin we can see through it. And if you could choose, would you rather know the moment of loss before it comes, or would you prefer the mercy of ignorance? At the wake, I couldn't look at her body. I avoided it. I preferred to remember her alive than to see one more image that might also come back in dreams. But it didn't help. Until today, when I wake up in the middle of the night for no reason, the first thing I do is look at the clock. And if it says 4:06, my entire body paralyzes. It's as if the nightmare hasn't ended, as if it's there waiting for another door to lock. Share your experience in the comments beginning with "I feel that," because feeling the weight of premonition, feeling the helplessness of knowing without being able to change, feeling the curse of sight when all we want is blindness, that's what connects us all who carry this burden. When we feel that certain hours hold more than minutes, that certain dreams hold more than imagination, that certain silences hold more than absence, we become part of a fellowship of the haunted, those who've seen beyond the veil and can never unsee what waited there in the shadows, patient and inevitable as time itself.